Welcome back. All right, so as we continue through this playlist, as promised, Montreal is next. Montreal's on the board. The Montreal Canadiens, a team that have had tremendous success in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but their Stanley Cup history, their most recent Cup win being 1993, also the most recent Stanley Cup win by a Canadian hockey team. They have bragging rights there, but it's been a long time. Montreal trying to build themselves back up to being a contending team. I like what Ken Hughes has done so far. We'll see what kind of fruit that bears probably next season. Now, in the power rankings I did for the quarter century, so from 2000, 2001 through 2023, 2024, the Montreal Canadiens were 20th in the regular season, 18th in the playoffs in those power rankings. So I'm giving the team a grade of a C+. I feel like that's a fair grade for Montreal. A team that did go to the Stanley Cup final in 2021. They were conference finalists in 2010 and 2014. As previously mentioned, their last Stanley Cup being in 1993. This is a team that has gone through its share of lean years. And when we look at it, when you look at the top 10 scorers over this time period, you can see that, the days of guys like Guy Lafleur, Jean Beliveau, and the like, long in the rearview mirror for this franchise. The number one scorer from January 1st of 2001 through the end of 2024, Thomas Plekanec. Yeah, Plekanec. 984 games, 233 goals, 373 assists, 606 points. Andrei Markov is second, 955 games played, 116 goals, 443 assists, 559 points. Max Pacioretty, 626 games played, 226 goals, 222 assists, 448 points. Brendan Gallagher, still with the team, of course, 752 games played, 218 goals, 208 assists, 426 points. There's been speculation about whether or not Gallagher is going to be traded for years now. I actually think you hold on to him till the end of his contract, and maybe he ends up retiring a Hab. Gallagher playing anywhere else would just look weird. Saku Koivu, 491 games, 117 goals, 288 assists for 405 points. Koivu, a leader for this team and an absolute warrior, but also going through a lot of injury issues throughout his career. Did not play anywhere near as many games as he should have. Nick Suzuki makes the list. 373 games, 108 goals, 178 assists, 286 points. I've been very vocal about how much I like Suzuki's game. I think that there may be a Selke trophy for him in the future. I'll go that far. I think when Montreal gets good, they have a good roster, we'll see his plus minus increase by a lot. He'll get more attention, and then we'll start seeing more consideration for the Selke trophy for Suzuki. PK Subban, 434 games, 63 goals, 215 assists, 278 points. Subban always generated really, really strong opinions on both sides as to whether people loved his game or didn't. And it's interesting because now, even as a guy who's on TV doing the broadcasts for ESPN, he generates a lot of opinions and just feelings from people around the National Hockey League as well, which is part of your job if you're going to be in the studio. If you don't generate any kind of reaction, positive or negative, from fans, you're probably not going to be there that long. Kovalev, 314 games, 103 goals, 161 assists, 264 points. Galchenyuk makes the top 10. Surprised me a bit. Through 418 games, 108 goals, 147 assists, 255 points. His career seemed to be going pretty well, and then it just stopped. That was it. Desharnais. This is David Desharnais, of course. It's David Desharnais, right? Sure. 435 games played, 79 goals, 171 assists, 250 points. I just don't want him confused with the defenseman that's now in Pittsburgh. Not the same player. And then you get to goaltenders, and it really has been the Carey Price show, right? If you look over the last 20 years, Carey Price, the guy, and I feel bad for Montembeault having to replace Price. 361, 261, and 79, the record for Price. 917 save percentage, ridiculously good numbers. Jose Theodore, 114, 115, and 29 record, 914 save percentage. Theodore had one really fantastic year, and there was no way he was ever going to live up to that again. So Theodore is a goaltender that maybe was overrated at times. I think now looking back, he's probably not remembered fondly enough. And then you got Cristobal Huet, a record of 58, 39, and 13, 920 save percentage. He was excellent when he was in Montreal. And Halak, who, of course, in 2010 helped to drive Montreal to a much further in the playoffs than anyone expected. knocking off a couple of pretty big-time teams and getting them to the conference final. 56, 34-7 record, 919 save percentage. So goaltending generally has been pretty strong for Montreal when you got Theodore, Huet, Halak, Price, really good goaltenders. And Montembeau's a good goaltender, although Dobesh may end up being the next guy, right? And then we get into the coaching. Interestingly enough, Michel Therrien is replaced by Claude Julien twice. So they were both coaches of this team twice, and both times Claude Julien followed Michel Therrien. Bob Gainey, he coached part of a season and part of another season. As general manager, I just assumed to try to get a good look at things when things weren't working out for the coaches he had in place. Guy Carbonneau also spent time as the coach. Jacques Martin spent time as the coach for the Montreal Canadiens. Randy Cunnyworth, there's a name for you. Dominic Ducharme as well was head coach, and Marty St. Louis, of course, the current coach. And I think, honestly, Marty St. Louis done a pretty good job. The general managers list is always going to be interesting with Montreal. And one thing that stands out with Montreal now is that I'm old enough to remember a time when if you didn't win a Stanley Cup within about a 5-year period, everybody needed to be fired. It is definitely a different feeling around Montreal now. Plus, it's a much bigger league, so rebuilds are going to take you a bit longer. Andre Savard, the GM at the turn of the century. Bob Gainey, who was there for a while. Pierre Gauthier also had his time as general manager. And Marc Bergevin. Marc Bergevin generated a ton of interest. I remember doing a video on Marc Bergevin as a general manager, and much like the Garth Snow one that I did that I talked about earlier in this series, I went into it expecting to have one opinion of the general manager, and I came out with another one, which was he actually hasn't done a bad job. But at this point, it is Kent Hughes who is in charge of the rebuild, and Montreal has a ridiculously stacked blue line. They also have some pretty good forward prospects. Yeah, things are looking up for the Montreal Canadiens, a team that is looking to get back to the Stanley Cup and win it this time. Getting all the way to the final in 2021 was fun, but they were pushed aside in the finals. I'm not going to say that easily, but I mean, I think it was, 5 games? Yeah, it wasn't as competitive as I think people were hoping for that season. Now, their team captains list starts with Saku Koivu, a player who was much beloved by Montreal faithful. Montreal fans can be tough. So when all Montreal fans agree we like this guy, you got to listen to them because they can be really harsh critics. Even some of the all-star Hall of Famers that they've had pass through have gone through their rough patches with fans and media in Montreal. Brian Gionta was captain there for a while. I actually have a Gionta jersey around here somewhere where he had the captaincy for Montreal. Max Pacioretty. Pacioretty I always felt bad for because there was the debate about whether he was the worst. I remember articles on whether he was the worst captain Montreal had ever had, and I thought, with their history, that's not really fair because, you just look at that team's history. It's ridiculous, some of the guys who've been captain in Montreal. Shea Weber was captain after that, of course. The 2021 Stanley Cup final was quite the run for Weber, quite the run for Price, and Weber hasn't played since. Price came back briefly after that. It didn't last, though. And then Nick Suzuki, of course, the current captain of the team, and I think the plan is to build around what Suzuki, Slavkovsky, and Caulfield have started there in Montreal. So, pretty bright future for the Montreal Canadiens. They've definitely been going through it since that 2021 run to the Stanley Cup final, but I never take Montreal lightly come playoff time. I have watched them win far too often when they weren't expected to. So yeah, there you go. The Montreal Canadiens. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. I will talk to you again soon.